That's not a bad thing. Sort of like the MacBook and Samsung's T-Books, this is a distinctive design to the ZenBook, a signature look, and it really is aging well, so why mess with it? Asus is leaving it alone. Instead, they're refining the casing. There are no sharp edges. The bottom plate fits on it very well, so literally polishing a good chassis. It has the swirled aluminum lid here. They call this, once again, smoky brown. To me, it has more plum tones than it has warm brown tones, but it's a kind of complex thing, and it really depends on how the light hits it, which is interesting. Nice combination of curves and angles here. This certainly looks kind of jewel-like and well-made. And for those of you who are worried about the hinges, there was the previous generation, some folks had a problem with the hinge getting loose on this. They have a different hinge design. We're going to show you a picture of the internals later so you can see everything that's upgradable. And you'll see, for those of you who have paid attention, the old one had a kind of door hinge design, a little round barrel with two plates of metal that were pretty sturdy, but it would get loose for some people. This has a completely new design. There's a metal rod with tension screws on the ends. Very easy to adjust yourself should you have problems with it. Hopefully you never will. So just want to address that one since I know some folks worry about it. Straight cut on the sides, nice looking, two USB 3.0 ports, and SD card slot right there. Tapers toward the front, you got the two-tone look. And again, that mix of angularness here with the curves, it kind of gives it a real nice look overall. No cutout for the lid lift there. Not too hard to open it up. I just managed that with one thumb. Thank you very much. And on this side, we have another USB 3.0 port, so a total of 3, both mini DisplayPort and a full-size HDMI, and that's your combo audio jack, and that is where the charger plugs in. On the bottom here, a bunch of Torx T5 screws hold this bottom plate on. They've changed the design. It used to just be the exposed Torx T5s to take the bottom lid off. Now you have to pop off the two rubber feet on the bottom only, and there's two Phillips head screws in addition. Then you can take this off. It doesn't have an abundance of those super grippy, tend to snap offy plastic clips. It's pretty easy just to lift this up if you grab it by the speaker grill holes, and this is where the stereo speakers fire from. Here's one of them, and it has ICE audio. No more Bang & Olufsen branding on that. Pretty decent sounding audio. And there's our other speaker right there. Doesn't show fingerprints much. Doesn't scratch too easily either. I've had several ZenBooks over the years, and I haven't had problems with them getting cosmetically ruined, but still, anything this pretty in this metal I tend to be careful of. Just can't help it. And when we open it up, we see the aluminum keyboard deck over here, a matching trackpad. Asus had trackpads that, quite frankly, were abysmal, and they've gotten so much better over time, which leads to another thing. This happens to be a Microsoft Signature Edition, and some of you are still confused what that means. That just means it's the same hardware you would get otherwise, but there's no bloatware, whether it's third-party bloatware or it is the manufacturer's own, because some manufacturers have way too much software, and Asus is guilty of that. They have their Asus Cloud Storage, they have their splendid color utility, which offers you about 5 semi-atrocious color settings. You're better off just with the start from scratch kind of thing there, and so there's less of it on here. You get the audio drivers, you get all the drivers that you need on it, but I do recommend in the case of looking at it, you don't look at this picture and say, well, that's a muddy, no contrast picture, though. So specifications versus real life use are sometimes you get a different experience than you might expect. It's a nice panel. It's not the world's best panel I've ever seen. It's not as striking as the IGZO panels on the XPS 13, but it holds its own against something like the HP Spectre X360, for example, or the Samsung T-Book 9 Spin we recently reviewed, which probably uses a very similar panel, though it had more problems with yellows than this does. And here for a yellow comparison, this is the Dell XPS with the higher resolution touchscreen option, and you can see how close on the yellows are. They're both very good displays. It's a little hard to tell in the video, but you can tell the contrast is higher on this sharp IGZO panel here. So speaking of the XPS 13, it is the more expensive competitor. You get some cutting-edge stuff. That's what happens right here. This has an NVMe SSD, the new faster M2 SSD. Our Asus here has a 2.5-inch drive, standard 2.5-inch laptop drive with a 512 gig Micron M600 SSD inside of it. So there's a couple of little things like that are different. Also, the difference in the footprint and the weight. The Dell's about 2.8 pounds, and you can see because Dell managed to make it so small, what a difference there is in size, despite the fact these are both 13.3 inches. So if you want to smack down between these, just shout out in the comments, and it can happen. So speaking of the SSD performance, here's the Crystal Disk Mark scores, which is pretty good for a 2.5-inch SATA interface SSD. Honestly, for most people, unless you do lots of large file copies every day, having a super fast PCIe SSD is not necessarily where you want your money going. So this is kind of a more practical machine. There you have scores there. Not as fast as, again, the competition, but more than fast enough. And you get the benefit of an SSD where if you shake it around, you're not going to disturb it like you would with a mechanical hard drive. Though in some markets, this may be available with a 2.5-inch HDD spinning hard drive instead. So how about performance? We have a dual-core 15-watt typical Ultrabook CPU, and here is a Core i7-6500U, as same CPU we've seen in several laptops we've reviewed lately, including the Samsung T-Book Spin, like I said, and the Lenovo X1 Yoga, the ThinkPad model. So right here, P2323 for our 3D Mark 11 score. That's performance mode test. Now that is a very good score there because this has the NVIDIA graphics. It's the 940M with 2 gigs of DDR3 VRAM. So it's certainly better than Intel HD 520 graphics, which is this can use Optimus to switch between them to save you power when you're not doing something graphically demanding. That's significantly faster than what you would get with HD graphics. So there's a big plus for you gamers, you video editors who need a little extra punch. This is going to give you a little lift to make Bioshock Infinite playable at 1920 by 1080 rather than seeming laggy. This is not for playing Far Cry 4 or Fallout 4 on wireless career there. It's sometimes can be a little more flaky. The 8000 series that we currently see in other Skylake machines is better. You could replace it. You could open this up, though it is socketed, and you could replace it. That said, this would perform just fine. It doesn't have quite the range of some of our other laptops, but this all-metal chassis that obscures the antennas could be a problem. It's nothing hideous, though. We haven't actually had any problems with it. Probably Intel's drivers have matured, too. That helps a lot in the firmware for the card. But like I said, the very expandable design inside, but no cutting-edge parts there, and that Wi-Fi card. But the only ways that Asus is really kind of coasting on their own good engineering and bringing the price down for you. The laptop has Asus's usual charging brick right here. Some people complain it's big. I mean, it's not that bad. The good thing is it's 65 watts, not 45 watts, so it'll charge the machine quicker. It has the long skinny cord here instead of the traditional two-part laptop cord, but Asus is making it longer than they used to in the old days when it was just way too short. 3-cell battery inside, 50 watt hour. Now, this is a pretty powerful machine. This is not going to, and a very high resolution display, this is not going to have super duper amazing battery life. Sort of like the Dell XPS 13 with the QHD display doesn't have the battery life of the 1080p non-touch. This guy runs about 6.5 hours when you're doing productivity, you're streaming video, that sort of thing. And because the display is so bright, to achieve our usual equivalent of about 100 to 150 nits brightness in our tests right there, that's the brightness is actually set pretty low. And no, I couldn't see any display flickering, and our camera obviously isn't picking any up. You're not seeing it either in this video. So decent battery life, not stellar, but then again, you got a Core i7, you got the big resolution on this display, you got a dedicated GPU that it switches into using whenever it needs it, so, you know, it's not going to have super duper amazing battery life. All right, and before we get into testing on BioShock Infinite, and you can see our settings right here, mostly low settings, 1920 by 1080, low, except for one setting on Ultra, and this is with GeForce Experience recommended in the game optimization. Yes, you can download and install GeForce Experience and keep the drivers up to date that way. That's nice. You don't need proprietary manufacturer drivers for this. Let's just talk about the rest of our benchmark results. WPrime computed Pi in 16.1 seconds, pretty much standard for this Core i7 CPU. Geekbench 3, the single core result was 3113. The multi-core was 6724, which is decent. We've seen some hit 7,000, but again, it's in the realm of normal. For 3D Mark CloudGate, it scored 6253. For 3D Mark Firestrike, it scored 1340. All right, let's hit up BioShock Infinite. And now here we are in BioShock Infinite. Those frame rates are good, pretty, you know, similar to what we've seen with other machines that have the 940M graphics card, and also this Surface Book that has an equivalent with just some faster memory inside. Nice and smooth, good frame rates for playing here. And you can hear the speakers, even for the sound effects. Our volume is only at 50%. There's a couple of different sound presets you can use. This is one for movie. It's loud. A little thin, a little tinny, but it's loud. So very good frame rates. Skyrim would also play